behalf of Department of Microbiology, TN Medical College and Nair Hospital, I welcome to the first series from the Dissertation Publication Literature Search. I thank all the faculty and delegates who have taken their valuable time out to participate today. I will now invite Dr. Jayanti, Professor and Head Department of Microbiology, TN Medical College, Nair Hospital, Mumbai. Welcome you all. Over to you, Dr. Jayanti ma'am.
A very good morning to all of you. Welcome to the academic sessions of the centenary year of Nair Hospital. It is indeed my proud privilege to begin with a bang. Whenever we talk of a student's dissertation or a research which we conduct, the first thing which comes to our mind is what is known about the topic we want to research. So when we want to know what is known, that is, what is the current information or the current knowledge? The most important thing is, how do you search the literature, scientific literature, to understand what is known? And what is it that we want to plan and direct our research towards? We have actually planned, carefully crafted this webinar series, keeping all this in mind, so that all our students' dissertation culminate in good publications. Now, we are all postgraduate teachers and we all have MD students. Some of you have PhD students also. Some of you who have joined are students themselves. So it is very important for you to know that research involves minute, meticulous planning and action. Towards this objective, we are beginning our webinar series with literature search. And we are extremely fortunate and thankful to Dr. Vasumati Sri Ganesh. She has agreed to speak to us, to address us, and I would like to share her CV with you. Welcome, Dr. Vasumati.
Ma'am, will you please do it full screen?
All those who have attended Dr. Vasumati's lectures know that she is the best. We couldn't have got anybody better than her. She has been a former medical librarian at the Hinduja Hospital and Health, Mumbai. She is also the founder and CEO of QMed Knowledge Foundation in Mumbai. She has conducted innumerable webinars with 470 lectures, keynotes, workshops on literature searching and referencing. She has created 4 online courses on information, resources, and literature searching, introduction to referencing, mastering PubMed and reference management. She has expertise in systematic reviews, searching, duplicates, and reference manager. She is recognized by the Maharashtra University of Health Sciences as a speaker, Maharashtra Medical Council as a speaker, and Academy of Health Professions Educator as a member. She has also received an international award in 2013. Without spending more time on discussing what all is involved in literature search, over to you, Dr. Vasumati. And thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you so much. And I would like to say that more than accepting the invitation, it's really more about you helping us spread our mission in doing this. So thanks so much to you. I'll just share my screen. Yeah. Could you just confirm that it's visible?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So let me begin. Okay, I'll skip this since Dr. Jayanti did it in elaborate detail. maybe I'll take 1 second to just say that as far as systematic reviews go, my expertise is in the searching, duplicates, and reference management. The rest of it, I have a very broad idea about, but this is an area that there are very, very few people in the country who can help. I myself am actually regularly learning more and more, but within what I know to offer, it has been very helpful to many people. So thank you for this introduction. And let me very briefly introduce the foundation that I'm heading, QMed Knowledge Foundation. We are a non-profit trust registered with the Charity Commission of Mumbai. It's a public body. And what we do is we like to call ourselves change makers in the health sciences and education and research areas, namely skill building in online searching and referencing. Because we realized, or I should say, I started realizing years ago that these two skills are practically not taught anywhere. If they are, it's in very few places. And even then, to the depth of how much we teach, barely exists. And we hope that as we do this, we will have the impact in the form of good research and eventually a healthier population, especially trying to do better and better Indian context research and less dependence on the Western research. How do we do what we do? Online courses, which I'll tell you about at the end, workshops, which have come to a halt ever since the pandemic happened. Lectures got substituted with webinars, and we do mentor all those who have registered for our online courses. What is the importance of this today? I think all the medical teachers are familiar with the ADCOM book. And in that, I don't know how many have paid attention to this part, section 3.4, which is about lifelong learning. This is all right at the medical undergraduate level, where 3.4.4 says the Indian medical graduate should demonstrate ability to search, including through electronic means, and then critically evaluate, etc. And in most research workshops, lot more importance is given to the critical evaluation, statistics, and so on, much less for the search. And I'm really, really grateful for the microbiology department to have put this lecture as first. You've really helped us spread our mission by putting this lecture as first, because till one searches and gets the best of papers, evaluation is a wasted exercise. QMed has been teaching these search skills since 2008, and this has got into the curriculum just about in the last revision. Before I move ahead, I'd like to touch upon what one Dr. Rakesh Biswas once commented on the work I do. He said, for everything, there is a background knowledge and foreground knowledge. Background knowledge is about resource. As far as my lectures go, it's about resources and principles of searching. Now, in medicine, obviously, you wouldn't teach surgery or ophthalmology without anatomy, physiology, etc. first. Similarly, for searching, one does need to know a lot about existing resources and the fundamental principles of searching. The foreground knowledge is about tips on how to narrow down search results, how to save results, how to apply results to patient care, or how to even get relevant results for specific things. But without the background knowledge, all this is like, the good old compounders who could give out medicines just by watching doctors for a long time, but they never had the background knowledge that the doctors had. So we like to stress a lot on background knowledge, and I will be covering a good deal of that. Trust me, it'll be interesting, not just a bunch of theory. So the agenda is, first, background knowledge about resources and understanding them, very, very vital. Background knowledge about searching, equally vital. Exercises on searching, so that's applying what we learned. Some more background about searching, that will be a little more in depth, and additional tips, and then a little about our courses, which if you register, you can continuously learn at your pace. And as I like to stress, lots of examples, and at the end of each of these sections, I'll give a few minutes for questions so that any doubts you have about each section, we can immediately clarify them. So the topic, I'd just like to bring it up again, it's literature search. Now, when do we need to do literature search? Starts now right from UG projects, postgraduate thesis, at the protocol stage and the actual project report and thesis stage. If you're faculty and writing articles or book chapters, but lest we forget, it doesn't stop with academics and research. Even in practice, you've got to stay updated lifelong, and evidence-based care for patients requires a knowledge of how to do good literature searching. Now, when we search literature for all these things we just talked about, and I like to highlight the practice part because most people keep saying, oh, this is all research orientation. What are our levels of needs? They are general to specific. I put 3 questions. It's very obvious that the first is very general, second more specific, third is hyper-specific. Now, when do we have these needs? What are antimalarials is a very foundational learning need. We want to know what antimalarials are. The second question is an additional learning need. We want to know something more specific about antimalarial drugs. And the third is for an action need, either patient care or policy making. So these are all the times when we have the needs with respective purposes, and we need to map what all resources are available for different kinds of needs. So if we take the first need, which was foundational learning, you have basic background and factual information resources like dictionaries, encyclopedias, textbooks, handbooks, manuals. All these you must be, everybody listening to this talk must be very familiar with these resources. They could be general, they could be subject specific like medical dictionaries, medical encyclopedias, medical textbooks, and so on. And all these resources are available either in print or online or both. I'm not going to talk any more about these resources because we've grown up with these and have a good idea about these. What we need to remember is we use them for basic learning, like in the MBBS days, to some extent in the postgraduate days. And after that, we go back to more to brush up that basic learning. But these are not necessarily the most up-to-date resources for other purposes like patient care. Let's go to the second type of resource, which is applicable when we want additional learning. Journals, and then we have a bunch here. Journals are published information resources. A publisher publishes journals. Thesis, conference presentations or abstracts, clinical trial registries, all these are called grey literature. They have not been formally published yet. Thesis, you're aware, it's you who have a copy, the institution or the university has a copy. Conference presentations or abstracts, you have it, the conference organizer has it. Sometimes they may put it up on the web, maybe only for attendees, maybe for others. But the full paper, when you publish it, it goes to a journal. Clinical trial registries are registries where anyone doing a clinical trial has to register there first, keep adding information as the trial progresses, and put in the results. But that is not a formal publication. Only when that becomes a journal article, that's a formal publication. So all these theses, etc., are called grey literature or unpublished literature. For research or additional learning, all these resources are important. Finally, when we have action-oriented needs, either to treat a patient or for making a policy, making a decision of some kind, then we need to get what are called results of research publications, which are analysis or synthesis of any research done through all the type 2 studies. So here we have evidence which we get from systematic reviews. What is evidence? A typical thing of you're comparing two interventions, maybe drug A and drug B, or intervention A and intervention B in the form of some physical manipulation versus no manipulation. So which of the two is better, or is there no obvious difference yet, or more studies are needed? All that kind of thing comes from evidence. One study may say drug A is better, one may say drug B is better, one may say both are equally good, one may say we don't know. When you pool all the results together with a specific statistical method, then you get the pooled evidence, and that kind of publication is a systematic review. Based on systematic reviews, for practice, there are information resources called guidelines, summaries. Guidelines are usually brought out by the country research body like ICMR, or organizations like IAP or other associations, where a team studies the topic, gets evidence from systematic reviews, and then says, if you have a patient with ABC conditions, step 1, you need to do this, step 2, you need to do this. So updated guidelines are obviously very, very good information resources for treating patients, or again for policies and more. Summaries are highly updated, quick revision resources. In a way, you can say summaries are like the cream of research presented in a textbook fashion, but in very short chapters. So there are specific resources which bring out summaries like this. I'll be giving examples of all these as we go. What I like to highlight with this slide is a single website could have just one textbook, many textbooks, or textbooks and journals, or a single journal, or only thesis, or only evidence, that kind of thing, or a mix of all the three types. So from today, when you go to any one website, try and see, does it have type 1, type 2, type 3, what kind of mixes, so that for your question, you know which area of the site you go to. Let's take and learn the research resources which are type 2 and type 3 in a little more detail. Type 2 and type 3 really have a hierarchy. How does that work? There's something called the evidence pyramid of research papers. You can divide this pyramid into 3 parts. You have basic research papers here, which is really advanced knowledge beyond textbooks, is what you can read in these kinds of publications. The middle set are all primary studies done on patients. So most of you must be aware of what case reports, case series, etc. are, up to randomized controlled double-blind studies. Right on top, you have the systematic and reviews and meta-analysis, which are created by studying RCTs and sometimes the next larger studies. So these are secondary because they don't directly study patients, they study studies. From systematic reviews emerge the guidelines and summaries. In fact, guideline authors, if they start that, they are often told, do a systematic review first and then actually publish your guideline if there is no existing systematic review. It's very important to note that narrative reviews and expert reviews are not sources of evidence. They are sources of higher learning, right? And only systematic reviews are sources of evidence. In the absence of systematic reviews, you have to make do with narrative reviews or randomized control trials and large studies like that. The type 3 results, they may be published in journals, that is systematic reviews or guidelines, may be published in journals, or they may be in specific web-based databases, like the Cochrane Library has a Cochrane database of systematic reviews. It also has other resources, I'll talk about them later. There's a NICE guidelines, UK-based. ECRI guidelines. This is something I learned about just a few days ago. So you are the first audience I'm talking about this. Though it did exist earlier in another format, but it's just in the last couple of years, it has come into the current ECRI website. Summaries, the websites are up-to-date, Dynamed, and there are still more. So all these, if you Google, you'll find their websites. Whereas systematic reviews and guidelines may also be published in journals, but it's best to look in these specific databases because you'll see the most updated versions of systematic reviews and guidelines. Still more resources, the type 2 and type 3 to find journals and results of research. Let me tell you what resources are available. There are what are called free indexes. And in free indexes, there are different levels of information available. All of us are familiar with PubMed. We know that abstracts are free and they link you to the full text articles in most cases. Whether the full text articles are free or not depends on the publisher. PubMed is primarily an index which tells you on this topic what are the articles available. Similarly, Cochrane Library, the systematic reviews database have free abstracts. Some reviews are free. And the systematic reviews are in this database itself. They are not reviews in other journals. So that's why select reviews are free. The others are available on subscription. The Cochrane Library also has a database of clinical trials. That is, articles published as clinical trials in journals and those that are there in certain clinical trial databases. In this database, only the titles can be viewed free. The actual abstract, etc., you've got to be a paid subscriber to be able to click and see it in the journal. There's a database called LILACS, which is Latin American, sorry for the spelling error here, Latin American Literature Focus. Again, abstracts are free, links to articles, just like PubMed. There's a PEDRO, which is physiotherapy specific. Again, same logic. ERIC, which is on education research, abstracts free, links to articles. And there is one, okay, these are all free. All these are free to search. Indexes that are not free, where you have to pay just to log in and even enter your terms. So Embase, it's like PubMed, but it includes a lot more European journals. CINAHL is an index to nursing literature. PsycInfo is behavioral and social sciences, psychiatry included. Scopus has basic sciences, health sciences, life sciences, social sciences. Web of Science is a citation index. Every paper that is published, who has cited it, cited by whom, etc., that kind of an index. These two are very, very large. All these are large, but these are extra large. But all these are paid indexes. Even to put in a term to search, you need to have a password. Then there are directories of journals. These are not indexes, but directories of journals. So you're seeing the table of contents and abstracts of different issues of many journals. So DOAJ, which is Directory of Open Access Journals. MEDNO, which has a huge collection of journals. Lots of them are Indian, some of them are non-Indian. Biomed Central. Then there is what is called an archive, which is PubMed Central. Why is it an archive? It's a duplicate copy of journal articles that are deposited here, either full journals or specific articles. Okay. So some journals put in only their free articles here. The reason for having an archive like this is, in case that journal decides to close down, a copy of the archives are, a copy of those articles deposited here are always available. Almost all journals in these directories are indexed in one or more of the databases, free or paid databases that I've shown you earlier. The advantage is, in those you can search by topic. You're searching across different journals. Here, you're seeing a directory of journals, and yes, there is a search facility built in, but there are much less features than what is there in indexes. The type 3 resources, let me tell you what resources are available. Cochrane systematic reviews, I just mentioned already. Cochrane has something called clinical answers. We can only see free titles. And if you are a subscriber, you can see what is a clinical answer for a clinical question. So they have a whole database of clinical questions with clinical answers. Up to date, again, is not free at all. And Dynamed also is not free. These are all summaries. And I mentioned NICE and ECRI guidelines, they are free to search. So systematic reviews, clinical answers, summaries, guidelines. Which resource does one go to? This depends on your information need. I had shown this slide earlier. So we know that for basic learning, you go through all these textbooks, handbooks, etc. For learning more advanced, you go to either a journals index or a journals directory and go through. And if you have access, clinical trial registries are all free to search. So those can be searched. For if you have to make a decision or actually make a decision for patient care or for policies, you have to go to systematic review databases, guidelines, summaries, see what is available there and then decide, do you need to make a fresh one or do you need to access these and learn about these? Other parameters, it depends on your access and budget. So if it's free, obviously you will go and search. If it is paid, first check out, does your institution subscribe? I know many people have never made the effort to find out from their libraries. Librarians have complained saying that we try doing user orientations and people don't come. Now, both things could be partially true, partially untrue, but we need to change the situation. Every institution, everybody needs to know what the institution provides access to, how they can use the resource. And if you do have access, you also have to consider what is your coverage of your research. If it's very basic, if you're a UG or PG student, for instance, most free resources will be enough for you to search. You don't have to break your head on paid resources. Of course, if they are available in your institution, you should search it. If your coverage of research is advanced, example, if you are authoring a systematic review, then you must try to see how you can work out on all possible databases. One tip is, if you know of institutions that have access, try to get one person from there to collaborate so that that person can do something about searching the paid databases and giving the literature. So I'll just recap what all I said so far. Resources, there are resources for basic learning, additional or advanced learning, decision making. These are textbooks, etc., journals and grey literature, systematic reviews, guidelines, summaries. Which resource do you go to? Depends on your need, what level of need that you have from here, what access do you have, can you collaborate with others, your research coverage. So I'll just take about 5 minutes. If anybody has any questions, then I can answer it on the chat, or if you can permit them to unmute, that's also fine with me. I'm just watching the chat box, or anybody could be permitted to unmute and ask.
So Vasumati, I wanted to know this Embase and Scopus. This is for the benefit of certain students. Is it just that we need to register or we need to pay also?
No, they are both very expensive databases. So if your institution has it, which is unlikely, I don't think any of our Mumbai institutions have them. Either you'll have to collaborate with somebody in the bigger institutions like the AIIMS and PGI. Some of the AIIMS have them, PGI has them. Or else in your research, you have to report that we do not have access to these, so we could search only the free databases. That's how the protocol goes.
Because generally when you're writing a systematic review,
Yes.
it becomes very important to
Absolutely.
look into the Embase and Scopus,
Very much.
which is paid and many a times not accessible.
Yes.
So it becomes very difficult.
That's right. But again, because say Embase and Scopus are protected by copyright, the guideline internationally is that at least one of the authors in the team of systematic reviews should have access. Only then you are allowed to search it. Otherwise, you have to say that you could not search it. Of course, obviously, then immediately when one is reviewing that paper, they'll say, oh, they haven't searched those, so have they found all the relevant studies? That is an issue. And that is why from QMed, we like to say that everybody has to now ask for these, negotiate for maybe countrywide licenses or whatever, or at least for all academic institutions, so that everybody learns these well and uses all of them very well. It is getting more and more important. The move has to come from all stakeholders to see that this gets done.
Because I'll tell you what is happening is the NMC, the previous NCI, does not insist that, the publications should be only on PubMed. It can be on Embase and Scopus. And many a times people do not find these full articles,
Absolutely.
At the most, they can find the titles.
That's right. It's very true. It is a huge limitation. And that's where I'm saying we need to petition that all medical colleges should have access to these. Somewhere a budget methodology to spend has to come in for this. And for bulk purchase for all medical colleges and so on. Which centers, hospitals, universities in Mumbai have good access to all these? My guess is Tata Memorial probably. I'm not sure if any other medical colleges has many of. I think some have Scopus, but I'm not sure about Embase. Scopus, Web of Science, probably some do. So you'll have to ask the medical colleges, and I think Tata Memorial has some of them. But Embase, as far as I'm aware today, it's Delhi AIIMS and couple of more AIIMS and PGI. That's what I'm aware of. Does simple Google search span all these? No, not at all. It spans, in fact, it probably doesn't even span. I know for sure it doesn't get deep into PubMed searching with PubMed, which is free. Definitely not the paid ones. Okay, I think 5 minutes is up. So people can reserve any more questions on what I've taught and bring it up at the end, time permitting. Okay, so I'll close this, hide this. So with that introduction to resources, I'm moving on to searching. First, let's understand what are search engines. Google and PubMed, what is the difference? I think it's come at the right time when we just had a question on that. Google is a search engine. Many people call PubMed a medical search engine, but I would like to describe it differently. Google is a search engine and searches across internet websites. PubMed has a search engine. First, it is a database. It has a whole lot of details of articles from thousands of journals. Today, the total count is somewhere more than 30 million items. Not the full text, but X number of details from every medical journal. So first the database is there and the search engine searches that database alone, does not go out and search medical journal websites. Okay. Right. So the order of events, just to clarify, Google, it crawls, finds any new websites and then indexes them. Okay. It can search any website, but up to a point when it comes to sources like databases. For instance, just to write this, I even checked out our QMed courses site. It only brings up the homepage and nothing further inside because we ourselves have kept it that Google doesn't go into depth searching. So in most cases, does not search database content in websites. PubMed, an item has to be added into PubMed. So usually it's not a single item. Today, X number of journals will add all their article details into PubMed. So X number of records will go into PubMed. Then only the search engine can search and get it. So if you take any JM, the latest issue may be out on the web but may not have got into PubMed, then PubMed cannot bring the latest issue out. That's just an example. I'm not saying that they do it at different times, but just to illustrate this. So additions of journals to PubMed are based on several criteria. That is, PubMed has a journal selection criteria. So not all medical journals are in PubMed. With that, let me also touch upon two fundamentals of searching which are across almost all databases of medical information or journals, etc. The first fundamental is the computer's brain and the human brain work differently. What do I mean by this? When we search, we think or we hope that all results will be about our search terms. That's exactly what we want anyway. The computer thinks when I fetch results, every result should contain the terms searched. So what happens? If I search PubMed for asthma and COPD patients, I do get results on asthma and COPD patients, something like this, blood eosinophils, biomarkers, etc. in asthma and COPD. But I also get results like this, where it says excluding asthma and COPD. But as far as the computer's programming goes, it is programmed to check asthma, COPD and get this out. And I'm sure all of us have experienced this at some point. Now we can, second fundamental, we can do a special search telling the computer search engine, results should contain our search terms in specific parts or areas. What do we mean by this? Let's take a typical record in PubMed or any other journal index. Everybody's familiar with this: title, author, journal, year, etc. And if you see search results, all of them will be like this. So there's a structure. We can put in our term, phrase, number, etc. and say which area we want our word or phrase or number. How do we do this? We specify this by tagging our terms. In PubMed, if I type asthma and tag it with TI, I'm saying I want the word asthma to be in the title of every journal article result that comes out. If I type white AU, I want white to be the author in all my results. So some of my results may be like this, where asthma is in the title, white is in the author. This is how we are talking about. So just recap the same two fundamentals. Computer gives us results containing our terms. We can specify where by tagging. Based on this, I'll move on to what I devised as 4 principles of searching. Again, I'm taking the context of PubMed. Let's set aside Google, which is a search engine. Some of them are applicable in Google, but I'm not going into that depth because Google's indexes all kinds of websites and not just journal articles. So we'll go into PubMed as an example. Any resource you search, you must know the resource very well. Just to give a crazy offhand example, if you're looking for a Mumbai telephone number, there's no point in searching a Delhi telephone directory. You know that only a Mumbai directory will have Mumbai telephone numbers. It's like that. So what exactly is PubMed? It is an index to articles published in approximately 5,000 journals. The index or the database does not contain the full articles. For every article in the selected journals, it contains only bibliographic details plus abstract where available, if the author has written an abstract. So this is typically one bibliographic detail of a record. And this is how much PubMed gives you. If you click the title, you may get an abstract. Now it mentions free article here, but the free article is not inside PubMed. Once you click the title and view the abstract format, there will be a link to the publisher's website, and that is where the article is available free. They are only telling you that it is available free. Okay. So the first principle, if you do just a word or keyword search, as we call it, the results contain our term anywhere. As far as PubMed goes, anywhere means the bibliographic details or abstract. So we saw that example of excluding asthma COPD. It contains the words but is not about it. The second principle is descriptive tag search. There are two kinds of tags, descriptive and otherwise generic tags. So we'll go first into the most important part of PubMed, which is descriptive tags. The results contain our term in the description area. What is the description area in PubMed? We are all familiar with this kind of a record. If you click a title, you're seeing the abstract in most cases. On the right side of the screen, there's a whole page navigation option. And there you can find something called mesh terms. Before that, you're seeing abstract, similar articles, etc. If you click mesh terms, then you're taken further below and there is a set of terms here. These terms are added to most PubMed records to describe the article. So even if there's no abstract, reading these keywords, you'll get an idea what exactly is this article about, what is it covering. So if your term is here, then it means that this article is about it. So how do we ask, how do we tag and say our terms must appear here? It's very easy. In the search engine, in the PubMed search box, you type asthma, tag it with mesh, which means you're telling the search engine, please find the term asthma in the list of mesh terms, because if it is there, it is about PubMed. So you're really saying find asthma here and asthma is here, so you have got it. Now this becomes useful if sometimes there are titles where the word asthma may not be there. It might be wheezing or anything like that. And there's no abstract. Then how do you know what it is about? It's the mesh terms that tell you what it is about. And when you do a search asthma mesh and retrieve one such article, you might wonder, is it really about it? But the guarantee is if asthma is in the list of mesh terms, the full article is 100% about asthma. These descriptive terms are added by specialist indexers from the National Library of Medicine, creators of PubMed. So typically today, if NEJM, BMJ, any of the journals send their issues to PubMed, PubMed first imports the basic bibliographic details like author, title, abstract, etc. Then indexers go through it with a mix of manual and computerized methods, and then they add those mesh terms. So mesh terms describe the whole article. The third principle is the generic or factual tag search. Results contain our terms in specific tagged areas. For example, in a typical bibliographic record, we can search for pharmacological therapy in the title, or we can search for White as the author, an article published in journal Drugs, etc. How do we do this? Let me share some very common tags. If I search with the tag drugs TI, PubMed search engine will search for it the term drugs in the title. If I tag it with TIAB, it will search for it in the title and also in the abstract. So you'll get more results. If I tag it with JOUR, it will retrieve all articles from the journal title drugs, whether it's about drugs or not. White AU, it will search for the word white in the author field, and it's not going to look for white matter, white cells, etc. It's looking for the word white in the author area. Similar, some more tags. AD means author's address, somebody from Institute of Drugs and Pharmaceuticals or something like that. Drugs mesh, we learned it in the second principle, but I've just put it here. It will look for the word drugs in the mesh terms list. If you do not tag your search term, it will look for it in all these areas, but it doesn't go search the full text because the full text is not inside the PubMed database. Numbers 143 page means it's looking for the number 143 in the page number area. PDAT or DP is the year area. When do we do this kind of tagged searching? If we wish to search for articles by an author in a specific journal from a specific institution and so on. For example, here I've typed Slim AU. I'm getting articles by author Slim. Any first author, last author doesn't matter, but author. If you want the initial, you've got to put it after the name. Like here you see Slim K, Slim R. Here you see Slim M, Slim L. More than one initial, it will be Slim RA, Slim KD, etc. Retina, JOUR. The results are from the journal title Retina. Nanavati Hospital AD. If I click this title, then here I can see actually there'll be a plus sign, and if you click that, then you see the affiliations. So the first author and second author are both from Nanavati Heart Institute. Right. Principle 4. Till now we've learned how to search a single term. This one is about combinations. We are searching for more than one term. How do we get these results? Results containing our terms in combinations we specify. So when we combine two or more terms, what happens? I'm just going to make this session a little lighter by taking a non-medical example. Suppose you're looking for a marriage partner through Shaadi.com or one of those matrimonial sites. And first you think, my partner should be a doctor, good-looking, tall, foodie, some of the thoughts that come to your head. Now, suppose you say, my partner has to be a doctor and good-looking. Then you say, and tall, and a foodie. What happens? Maybe you first identify 20 doctors, out of which, when you added and good-looking, it came down to 11, and tall came down to 5, and foodie came down to 3. So the more you add and in a searching a database, your results keep coming down. Reverses, if I say doctor or good looking or tall or foodie, then if you started with 20, doctor or good looking means my marriage partner has to be either a doctor or good looking, could be both. So 20 becomes 30, add tall becomes 47, add foodie becomes 300 people, because among 300 people, each person is minimum one of them, could be 2 of these, could be 3 of these, could be all 4. Okay? The all 4 is the 3 people here. So understand that in a database search, and means you get less and less results, or means you get more and more results, because you're saying 1 or 2 or 3, any of the conditions, it's what you're getting in the results. So if we type in our search in PubMed as prevalence of asthma and bronchitis in India, that's a wrong method of combining search terms. How we have to combine is using and or not. These terms have to be typed in capitals and they are called Boolean operators. So this is just a technical term. It only means this and or not. How do we use them? Suppose I separately searched 2 terms. One search I did was asthma. Separately, I searched bronchitis. Let's say I got 100 results for asthma, 70 results for bronchitis. So I put these numbers here. If I type asthma and bronchitis, I'm not asking for all articles about asthma, bronchitis. I'm asking for how many results in the entire PubMed contain both terms together. Yeah, how many records contain both together? So obviously it will be either 70 or less than 70. Most often it's less than 70, and we have 45 results. Asthma or bronchitis, how many results in the whole of PubMed contain any one of the terms, maybe both together? Here we have 100 plus 70 definitely, minus 45, because this 45 is there in both the sets. So physical numbers are 100, physical numbers are 70. 45 are physically present in both. So it will remove one of the sets because we don't want duplicates. It will give us 125. Last, asthma, not bronchitis. How many contain asthma, which is 100. Do not, within that, how many don't contain bronchitis, which is 45. So 100 minus 45, that is 55. This is the simplest and easiest of the Boolean combinations. Something you've got to be 100% clear with. After that, there are complex ones we can do. But if you're very clear about this, those become easier to do. So to summarize the fourth principle, when you combine two or more search terms, use Boolean operators. If you use and, every result contains every search term, so you get less results. Or every result contains minimum one term, so you get more results. Not every result contains the first term, does not contain the rest, and so on, so less results. So a recap of the four principles. Search methods. If you do a word search, your results contain the terms anywhere in the bibliographic record. It's not searching the full text. Mesh search. Results contain our terms in the list of mesh terms, and this is the most crucial method to get articles which are about what you want. Field search, that is the generic tags in the fields we specify. Usually we do this for not for topic searches, but for other kinds of searches. Searching with Boolean operators gets you results in the combinations you specify. Again, any questions on these, the principles and the fundamentals? Okay, some people have asked questions here. I'll just go up to the top.
Please answer only the relevant questions.
Yeah, I'll only all the relevant ones here. I'll be suggesting, life sciences is not my specific area, but I will suggest some. Software for bibliography, keep these questions to the end. How to use PubMed or Google Scholar to efficiently get the maximum. I'll talk a little about that. All this, okay. Okay, most of these are generic questions, so I'll have to talk about them later. Anybody has specific questions on the principles of searching or the Boolean operators, etc.? Okay.
There is a question on UK English and US
Yeah,
English.
I'll just answer that one. So typically you'd have to type, let's say, just give me a second. Yeah, anemia. ANAEMIA or ANEMIA if you're searching it just as a text word or title abstract. But if you search it as a mesh term, if you're tagging it with anemia, with mesh, then you can use any spelling. The search engine automatically maps it there. But if you're searching just title abstract, then you'll have to do ANAEMIATIAB or ANEMIATIAB. Can you combine and or not in the same search? 100% you can. Those are more advanced. Like for example, you can say anemia TI or anemia TI with the two spellings, and peptic ulcer or duodenal ulcer. Only you'll have to put in appropriate brackets, or you have to use the advanced search option to do step by step. I won't be going into that detail, but we cover all these in our online courses in very great detail. You can do it. The answer for your question, can you combine? Yes, you can combine long. You can make a search strategy which is 1 page, 2 pages Word document long with lots of and or nots. Quickly, any other question on the tags or Boolean operators? Okay, then I'll move on. So there is something called truncation or wildcards in searching databases. The symbol star can be used in databases like PubMed. If you type in the search box asthma star, you will be searching for asthma, asthmas, asthmatic, asthmaticus, asthmatics, so many variations. If you, after the star, you put TI, TIAB or don't put anything, it will search all the areas. For mesh, don't put a star because mesh terms are very, very specific. I'll be teaching a little more about mesh a little later. In PubMed, star is the only truncation and you can only put it at the end of any word you type. Some of the databases, like I just gave the example of anemia, you can put AN star MIA in some databases, either star or question mark, whatever they tell you, so that ANEMIA, ANAEMIA both will be searched. But PubMed doesn't allow any truncation in the middle of a word, only at the end. Some databases allow in the beginning, so that if you want, say if you put feeding star, then it could pick up breastfeeding, baby feeding, all kinds of things like that. So as I said, other databases have things like this, either the hashtag or question mark or dollar. So WOM hashtags N gets you woman or women. PubMed does not have this. So this is just for information now. And you, in any of those databases like Embase or anything, you must check the help files to understand how those truncations work. Okay. Similarly, now PubMed, I taught Boolean operators and or not. In other databases, not in PubMed, you have near, two words near each other. Example, symptom near headache. Symptom and near, usually near means up to around 20 words apart. Okay? So symptom and headache may be 5 words apart, 8 words apart, and so on. So again, this is in other databases, not in PubMed. Next, 2 words next to each other. Symptom, next headache, which means the word headache is immediately after symptom, and that way. So with this, let's do some exercises as I promised. Let's understand that in PubMed or in any database, the best way of putting in search terms is not a free English sentence, but you put in a word or number, tag it, add the Boolean operator, next word or number, tag it. And when I say word, it means phrase also, like diabetic retinopathy or retinopathy of prematurity, those kinds of words. So example, diabetes TI or hypertension TI. What am I looking for here? I want a set of articles which have either the word diabetes or the word hypertension or both coming in the title. When I see it in the title, I'll select which of them I want. I could search for stem cell transplantation mesh. I want this phrase coming in the mesh term because I want articles about it and 2016 DP, that is published in the year 2016. So word, Boolean operator, word, and in each of those you have to tag it. Tags can't come only at the end. For each word or phrase, you tag it. So let's do some specific ones. I remember an article about asthma appearing on page 143. I'm just going to give a minute for each of you to solve it on your own. You don't need to type it. Just mentally think of it and then I'll put up the result. In a live classroom, I would ask people to solve it, but here I'll just do it this way. So it is about asthma appearing on page 143. So the answer will be about asthma means asthma mesh appearing on page 143 page. Since both are compulsory in the result, you're combining it with the Boolean operator and asthma mesh and 143 page. My HOD told me to read up articles by N.D. Brown in the journal Pediatrics. Again, I'll give you a few seconds. Think about the answer. Brown ND. Remember, initials in PubMed come after the name. Brown ND AU and Pediatrics JOUR. Just take a moment to note, I put ND in capitals, I put JOUR in capitals, this is mixed, all that doesn't matter. Boolean operator alone in capitals. Truncation search, I'll give one example. Suppose I want to find all approximately how much literature in PubMed covers toxicology. If I type toxicol star, one will retrieve items with toxicology, toxicological, toxicologist, toxicologo, etc., etc. So, truncation symbols save you from typing all these terms with or. So, just this alone will get all these results. Now, remember, truncation only searches for extension of the word with more letters. You're not searching for toxicological reaction. That will automatically come because toxicological you're retrieving. You don't have to worry whether the word reaction will come or not. You don't have to type toxicological reaction. Toxicol star automatically gets toxicological. If the next word is reaction, automatically it will come. Topic search. Till now we just did example searches. We'll do a topic search. I want to quickly read up. My purpose is not for a thorough literature search. I want to quickly read up something on use of biomarkers in pneumonia as well as in bronchitis. That is, I want to see how biomarkers work for diagnosis of pneumonia. I also want to see how biomarkers work for diagnosis of bronchitis. And I just want a handful of articles. I don't need the thorough entire search results. So a topic search needs some deliberation and planning. First, you have to be very clear what your results will be like. Every result item must contain biomarkers for sure, either pneumonia or bronchitis or both together, because you're fine with biomarkers in pneumonia, biomarkers in bronchitis, biomarkers in both. So some will be like this, some will be like this, and some will be biomarkers with both. This visually you must have very clear. What are the steps? We know that the search terms are biomarkers, pneumonia, bronchitis. We are not going to use I want to retrieve kind of words. Let's add Boolean operators. So it will be biomarkers and pneumonia or bronchitis. Next, we have to put them in the correct order, because if we put it in the order as above, first PubMed will pull out all articles that have biomarkers and pneumonia together. It will make a subset of the entire PubMed. Then it will search for this subset or all articles on bronchitis. So you'll get a huge retrieval where there's lots of bronchitis with nothing to do with biomarkers pneumonia. So how do we put it in the correct order? It will be pneumonia or bronchitis coming first and biomarkers. Now what happens? It will first pull out every item from the entire database with either pneumonia or bronchitis or both. When it sees and biomarkers, it understands that the biomarkers has to be inside this set. So if it pulled out 100 with either pneumonia or bronchitis, it will look in that 100 how many have biomarkers and get out your 27 or 35 or whatever it is. There are other methods of doing this by brackets and all that, but I won't go into that. This is one method you must know. If you don't know the other methods, it doesn't matter. This is one method that is crucial to know, and I'll tell you why as we go a little later. Having identified the Boolean operators, let us tag our searches. Our purpose was we wanted to quickly get some articles. In such a case, we can just tag it with TI, because in the results, we are going to see in every title either pneumonia or bronchitis, and we'll see biomarkers. From that, we can choose. If we get some 35 results, we can choose some 5 articles we want to read. If you get just 2 or 3, then you can try TIAB, because you can at least view the abstract and decide. But when you're finally doing your search, you must use mesh, pneumonia mesh or bronchitis mesh and biomarkers mesh. That is when you will get every result to be very relevant. Of course, you may want to exclude some of them for certain other reasons, but definitely every result in this search is about pneumonia or bronchitis, and biomarkers. So revision of this much. First, we went through fundamentals of saying results contain our terms and we tag our terms to say where. The 4 principles were word search, descriptive tag search. In PubMed, it is mesh. In other databases, some of them have other kinds of descriptors. Some others also have mesh. Factual tag search, TIAB, these are common to many databases. Combination searches with Boolean operators and or not. As I said, in some databases, you have a near next. Boolean operators in most databases, you're required to type them in capital, and it's always a good practice because it will not reject it if you type it in capital. It's a good practice even for us visually. It helps us understand what we have done. And in PubMed, the tags must be in square brackets. In other databases, some of them specify round, some of them have it in a different way, AU:white. So in each database, you have to learn how the tags work, but the principles of tagging are common to all. So again, questions on these methods, the tags, anything? If there is an introduction not found, how to search that journal, please inform future webinars. Okay. Yeah. Any questions on the tags that we learned so far and the search methods, how to? Okay.
Can you combine and, or, and not in the same search?
Yes, 100% you can. As I said, you could do, like we already saw the and or combination, you can definitely do the not as well. And you can do each operator, you can use any number of times. Only thing is, how to do it is something you've got to understand it so thoroughly that you have to do it right. Okay, I think I'll go ahead with that.
End of your talk, you could just talk about your online courses because
I will, sure.
That's what people are asking about.
Yes, I will. I have some slides on that. I'll show them. So now that we know the 4 principles of searching, that is word search, the mesh search, the field search, and the Boolean operators, let's learn a little more in detail about mesh. What is mesh? Medical subject headings is the full form. Mesh is a collection of standard terms in a thesaurus called Mesh Thesaurus or Mesh Database. I'll show you where it is. And indexers from the NLM. Indexers are subject experts who are also trained in mesh indexing. They take terms from this collection to tag or describe every article record. They can't just put whatever they think it is about. Some of the people attending this may have authored several articles. Journals tell you, give 5 keywords describing. You can give whatever you feel. That is like adding hashtags in Twitter and Facebook and all that. But indexers cannot just do any term. They will only take tags from the mesh thesaurus. So let's understand the mesh thesaurus. And even for us to do a search, I had earlier demonstrated asthma mesh, stem cell transplantation mesh, hypertension mesh, etc. We can't tag just any term with mesh. We have to find out if that mesh term is in the thesaurus. How do we do that? This is the PubMed homepage. We normally see only the blue part. If you scroll down, you will see all these sections as well. The mesh database is here. When you click mesh database, you're taken out of PubMed into the mesh database screen. Now, if I want to find literature on pregnancy-induced diabetes, I want to know, is this a mesh term? I type it, click search. I'm told that the thesaurus term is diabetes gestational, which is gestational diabetes. There's a small paragraph here called the scope note. It tells you what kind of articles are tagged with this term. diabetes induced by pregnancy but resolved at the end. It does not include previously diagnosed diabetics who become pregnant. Such articles are indexed with pregnancy in diabetics. Okay? So we need to see this to take the right term to search. An indexer will refer to this to see which is the best term to use to index an article. Another example, spectacles, it maps to eyeglasses, which is the mesh term. Eyeglasses are a pair of ophthalmic lenses where the purpose is to aid or improve vision. It does not include goggles or non-prescription sunglasses, for which the mesh term is eye protective devices. These protect the eyes. These try to aid or improve vision. So again, we need to choose the best term. Now, not every term has such a hyper-specific definition. I just took out two to show the importance of searching mesh. So let's take that same topic and see how we can do a search, identifying these in the mesh database and not having to come back to PubMed and typing them all over again. Okay. So remember the order, it was pneumonia or bronchitis and biomarkers. Okay. That's why we had to do that exercise first. So first, in the mesh database, we type the first term pneumonia and click search. This time, there's not a single term, but many terms, many mesh terms, general to specific, that have the word pneumonia. We want pneumonia as a condition, so we select the term, and on the right side, there's a box called the PubMed Search Builder. So we have to click Add to Search Builder. The system itself will put in pneumonia mesh here. Don't worry about the inverted commas quotes. Just look at the word pneumonia tagged with mesh. Our second term is bronchitis. So we've added this term. We erase pneumonia and type the word bronchitis. Search the second term. Click search. This time we find bronchitis again. Select this. Before adding to the search builder, we need to change that and, which is default, to or. Then add to search builder. It will put in pneumonia mesh or bronchitis mesh. Now, the third term. We type in biomarkers, click search. When you click search, it will show biomarkers. Select this term. This time the Boolean remains and, which is default, just to add to search builder. It adds and biomarkers mesh. So right from here, we can do this as we find each term. Click search PubMed. And we've got some 4,497 results. Pneumonia mesh or bronchitis mesh and biomarkers mesh. Suppose we just did biomarkers for pneumonia and bronchitis. We got only 144 results. Not every time this happens. I'll show you an example where we get more by a word search, and I'll tell you why all this happens. But here, the way it has done the search has got only 144. We are missing out a whole lot more. In the mesh database, you can search only one term at a time. You remember, first we put pneumonia, clicked search, added it to the search builder. You can't, in the mesh database, you can't type pneumonia or bronchitis, only one term at a time. You find a term, add it to the builder, then look for the next term, find and add to builder, and so on. Any questions on this?
There are three questions.
Yeah. What is the difference between mesh and keywords of a paper? Keywords are what the author has written. They may or may not be standard terms found in the mesh database or any other. So an author might write community acquired pneumonia. Mesh does not have a mesh term for community acquired pneumonia. There are other ways of searching for that, which I'm not covering in this lecture unless time permits at the end. But it's there in our courses, well covered. Can you use and operator twice? Definitely, any number of times. All operators can be used any number of times. Now, if we search asthma and bronchitis and biomarkers, in our results, we'll only get results which have all three terms together, which can be a right search depending on your information need. Okay? Absolutely fine. That's it. Only 2 questions I see. Yeah. Anybody else has any other question? Ma'am, when we manually search a topic with a mesh tag, then do we put, no, we don't need to put inverted commas. Thanks for the question. You can just type asthma, tag it with mesh, not required. That was a very in-depth question, very observant. Nice. Anybody else? In mesh terms, can you say body mass index or such? Yes, you can. As I said, retinopathy of prematurity, body mass index, everything you'll have to go and see, is that term a phrase as a mesh term? Is it available? If it is not, there are other methods to find sometimes a mesh term. Like I'll just give you an example. Community acquired pneumonia. I'll give you the answer, but not how I found it. Community acquired pneumonia has to be searched for community acquired infections mesh and pneumonia mesh. Can you say, yeah, that one is there. Can we use if else? No. PubMed doesn't permit that. What is the difference between thesaurus and dictionary? Both are opposite. Dictionary gives you the meaning. Thesaurus gives you the context in which a word is used. So mesh thesaurus tells you what kind of papers will have that mesh term. For example, spectacles will be in the mesh term if the article is about lenses which are used for improving vision. Eye protective devices will be used for articles about goggles or fancy glasses. Okay, I think we'll stop with that. Any more? Just note them down. We'll see them at the end. We'll see how to use subheadings for mesh searches. Subheadings means aspects of a term. Asthma, let's say if it gets me today around 70,000 results, I want only say diagnosis of asthma. How do I use a subheading of diagnosis? I'll show you here. So let's take causes and diagnosis. We want causes as well as diagnosis of pneumonia as well as bronchitis. I've purposely chosen a slightly long topic here. How do we do this? First term, pneumonia. I click search. This time, I don't just select and add to search builder, but I click the term. When I click, I see a whole lot of subheadings available. I choose etiology for causes, diagnosis, add to search builder. It puts in pneumonia diagnosis mesh or pneumonia etiology mesh. See, while the default Boolean operator is AND, because we've selected two together before adding to search builder, it understands that we want everything about both, so it has put in the OR. Suppose I did etiology first, add to search builder, then choose diagnosis and say add to search builder, then it would make this AND, right? Because the moment we click add to search builder, whether we have one or more, it does a OR of each. Next, search the second term. I'm typing bronchitis, click search, repeat the action. I click the term, select etiology diagnosis. Now my question was, I want this etiology diagnosis of pneumonia as well as bronchitis. Again, I change AND to OR, then add to search builder, then it gets in everything. Okay, I think I had made a mistake here while taking the screenshots. It should have shown OR here once I changed it. This was a mistake on my part. It would actually do OR for everything. Finally, you click search PubMed and you're getting this result. Yeah. Okay, here it showed AND. So actually it should have got still more result because I've made a mistake here while I did this yesterday. And if I do causes and diagnosis of pneumonia and bronchitis in plain English, it is more results, but I can now understand I had made a mistake yesterday. Whereas if I had kept it at OR, I would have got probably 6,000 odd results. Okay. So the point is, in most cases, when you do a mesh search, you're not missing out any. But there are instances when you should do both mesh as well as plain text. Again, all this is taught in good detail in our online courses. More of importance for those who do systematic reviews, that advanced module part of it. The basics, whatever I'm covering, is available in lots more detail. So in the mesh database, you can choose more than one subheading. I chose 2. You can choose 5, 6, 10, whatever numbers you want. Okay. When do you use subheadings? Causes of a disease. So you choose asthma and choose etiology. Adverse effects of a drug. Find a drug, choose the subheading adverse effects. Poisoning by a drug, fentanyl/poisoning. Surgery for hernia, hernia/surgery. Again, any questions about subheadings? Everyone's understood the subheadings part of it? When do you use it? For all these, any aspect about a term. And how do you find it? Find the mesh term, click it, see the subheadings. Okay, I think that's fine. So a recap about mesh. You find the mesh term, add to search builder, search PubMed. If you're doing more than one mesh term, after add to search builder, find the next, choose the Boolean operator, then search. For 2 or more subheadings, plan the order of terms correctly, important. Choose Boolean operators correctly, choose the subheadings correctly. Finally, one feature on verifying incomplete or incorrect references, because we get them in several contexts. Somebody passed it on, somebody told us in a hurry on the phone. I'll show you one example. You attend a conference, the speaker put up the slide and gave this incomplete reference. I'm just showing the incomplete reference here. Author, just 2 words of the title, year, that's it. And you found that slide very interesting, wanted to read the article. What do you do in PubMed? There is something called a single citation matcher. When you click, you get a screen like this. This is our incomplete citation. So we put in elements in the right places. Kumar V, author, forecasting malaria, title, 2015 date. We don't have the journal, we don't have volume, issue, page. Click search. It translates our query into search terms with tags and Boolean operators. And we have this one single result in this case. Sometimes you may get more, one single result. And article is free. You go through it. You want to cite it in your paper. What do? Click cite. You get a pop-up like this. Sorry. You can copy it and note it down, paste it, whatever. So everything is readily available for you in most databases. Of course, there are some things which don't happen, but a lot happens and we need to know what all happens. Use them to the best. So all these things could really probably save you hours of search time. Okay? So a final recap, 3 types of information resources: basic, textbooks, etc., research, journals and grey literature, synthesis, systematic reviews, guidelines, summaries. In PubMed, we learnt about word search, mesh search, field search, Boolean operators, truncation, single citation matcher. So maybe before I go into our website to tell you, or maybe I'll tell you this and then we'll take questions. QMed.ngo is our website. If you click online courses, you actually go to an intermediate page which tells you how do you register, what do you have to pay, etc., etc. And then you come into the QMedCourses.in website. You have the link from there. So the first course is free. The second course is free. These are very basics. Even this contains a little more than what I taught today. It may not cover some of the things, but it covers most important things and tells you a little more. Introduction to referencing. When do you reference? What do you reference? All that is covered in this. Mastering PubMed tells you a lot about PubMed. And the fourth course is Reference Management with Mendeley. So as I said, the first two are free, open to all. You only have to register. Then the third and fourth, by payment for an institution. For individuals, we ask a donation of their choice. Minimum amount we ask for is 2,000. And people are free to give how much they feel. They can give in the beginning 2,000. If they are very happy with the courses, they can again give later, all that. It's completely optional. So the third and fourth course and more courses if we add them. Plus, we've also added a database of lot more resources that are useful in searching, writing, etc. Plus, UG students, we only ask for a donation of 250 and we also offer prizes. If you complete the courses in 1 month and you get 60% or 80% or 100% and anything in between. So what is new on QMedCourses.in for both individuals and institutions? This resources database. So when you scroll down after PubMed, you'll see Mendeley and then a resources for you. These resources are useful for searching. That means what other databases are free and available for writing and reporting and for extra reading. So articles on all this. Yeah, I'm just giving one example on each. So resources useful for searching. One is a guide to finding full text articles. This is in our own website. We have created just a single page with a lot of tips on how to find full text articles. And we revise this page. We check it out every month to see whether those links are working. And if we find a new resource, we go and add it there. It's all continuously updated. For resources useful for writing, one example is the site called AuthorAid, which has a lot of tutorial and guides. Plus, they conduct courses at different times of the year to help authors in developing countries. If you can see that, it says it's a free global network that provides researchers in low and middle income countries with aids. This is one example of that extra reading. We've taken a whole lot of topics useful in education and research. So one such topic is publication ethics. Here, this is completely created by QMed. Indian publications, other English language free articles, other English language articles that are not free. Anything you click. So let's say if I click this other English language articles that are free, there's a full, so you can see here the use of or, and, or, again, and so on, but I've used brackets as well. Okay. So a detailed search and it's getting you 187 articles restricted to the last 2 years on publication ethics. Publishing/ethics, ethics of publishing, okay, that kind of thing. Now you might, since there's enough time, I'll just take this before anybody asks. Here I've searched ethics of publishing as a mesh term. I will find articles that may or may not have the word publishing or the word ethics or publication, etc. in the title or abstract, but the article is 100% about publishing ethics. Now I've also said either this or the word ethics in the title or bias in the title, and publishing or publications, etc., etc. There's a long strategy. Why have I done a TI search? Because PubMed has what is called Medline journals which get mesh terms, plus a lot more journals which do not get mesh terms. So those journal articles will not be retrieved if I use publishing/ethics mesh alone. So to retrieve those also, I've used this. I could have used TIAB, but I would have got too many results. I didn't want to present too many here. So I've done this. Okay. So this way, on several topics, we have Indian publications, free articles, non-free articles. Why the non-free? Because they may be from NEJ and BMJ, which you will have access from your institution. You could follow us on social media because a lot of these we also update on social media regularly. But if you're a paid subscriber to our courses, then you never need to lose what could disappear on social media or it will get embedded after too many days. It will always be available here. So qmed.ngo/blog, that's I write blog posts about the need for all this and why things are not happening and so on. Facebook, the QMed KF, QMed Knowledge Foundation, Twitter, and on LinkedIn, I haven't developed our page well enough, but I post whatever I post here, I post it on my personal profile as well. So follow us on one or more, whatever you're comfortable with. Final set of questions anybody has. So I'll take the last few first, and then does PubMed on any database also cover preprint? So for preprint, there is a MedRxiv. I've just put it in the chat, MEDRxiv. Just Google that and you'll find medical preprints there. And I think I have written some blog posts on preprints. So, and I will be adding them to our resources database. Please suggested resources for life sciences. So some of those which I said, now PubMed also covers some amount of life science, and similarly, whatever databases I've covered today, the Web of Science, Scopus, all of them have lots more life sciences. There's one called Biosys, but all of these are paid resources. So free resources on life sciences, I'm not too sure about. Okay, can you please tell the use of slash? Slash is used for subheadings. Asthma / diagnosis means diagnosis of asthma. If you're not sure about it, you'll have to search asthma in mesh, choose the subheading, add to search builder, it will put in the slash. So if you choose etiology, then it will put in asthma / etiology. And after asthma / you can put only one subheading. If you want two subheadings, you'll have to do asthma / etiology or asthma / diagnosis, which is what we had done. Let me go above. Yeah, preprint I covered. Thesaurus Dictionary, all these I covered. I'll go right to the top so that covered these. Software for bibliography, I'm assuming you mean reference managers. So the most popular ones are Zotero and Mendeley. In our tutorial, we've covered Mendeley. Someday, quickly, I'm hoping to add Zotero also, how to use them properly. I hope I've understood your question right. Otherwise, you could put them. Can Raman spectroscopy use for early detection of cancer and use as diagnosis technique? I haven't understood that question. If somebody can elaborate that, it would be good. Okay, as diagnosis technique in mesh, it's unlikely that Raman spectroscopy would be a subheading, but you might have to choose. If it is a mesh heading, I would think it wouldn't be. You'll have to search for it as a TIAB term. But if you have any doubt, in the last slide, my email ID will be there. You can write to me and ask. Okay. How can we do research being a student? Okay, so there are a lot of student forums which discuss this. One you could just, again, contact me or search for is Aspire, ASPIRE, which is a KEM students initiative. BJ Medical in Pune also has a student research forum, and all of them have WhatsApp groups and so on. So again, Pranali Fadke, if you contact me, I'll give you more details. How to use PubMed or Google Scholar efficiently to get the maximum. How to view articles for free. How to quote literature while. So you're really asking a question for which the answer is do our tutorials. Only then you'll really learn all of these. We haven't put in Google Scholar as a tutorial yet, but those who are doing systematic reviews, etc., I do give them some level of introduction. We will be adding these one by one. Again, once you learn how to use PubMed well, you yourself will do a better Google Scholar search for sure. Okay. how to pick on a suitable mentor who's not from their college, what is the correct way to approach them to get a definite response. There is no one correct answer for this. And again, if you're a UG student, connect with me, because we are just launching a project where one young doctor and I are working on this. He's promised to do a lot of the spade work. We want to help undergraduate students write articles. So there will be a structured method of our choosing people and doing. We are also having our limitation of just two of us coordinating this, but we are getting mentors as subject specialists who will guide and then help the whole process. It will take a little time. I'm not promising instant things, but we'll do our best. I'll also put you in touch with other such groups that are doing something, because UG research has just started in the last few years. For it to thrive, we need to all work together to make it better and better. Average, how many literatures do we have to read for write-up? This depends on what kind of paper you're doing. If it's a case report, just a handful would be good enough. Then depending on that whole, in that evidence pyramid, what I put. If you're doing a systematic review, the ideal is not missing any relevant paper. So a search to do that is a very elaborate one, which is something I guide through our advanced courses. And there's so much. How to search on Cochrane Embase, how to search for Gray literature. So as I said, now each of these sites, Cochrane Embase, etc., will have their own tutorials. But I recommend doing ours in PubMed first, because then you will find it easy to apply that knowledge in those. And yes, I do plan to add a Cochrane tutorial because at least it is free to search. Embase I cannot add because it's not free. What I do plan to put up is a fact sheet of, if you want to do a mesh search, what do you do on Embase? That kind of a thing. How to do research at UG level, I think I answered that. How to decide which type of study is beneficial. Lot of research methodology teachers teach this very well, and I'm not qualified to teach this, so I will not answer that one. I think the rest we have answered. Now, 2 new messages. Let me reach there. Please tell us about your online programs. I just did. I can just show it again. This is probably not, can you, if we always need statisticians. So in descriptive studies, you may not, but in others, definitely. How to get the full text? I told you that even if you go to our website, qmed.ngo, there is a link called research resources. So we've put samples of what we put in our resources database, so that how to get the full text paper, that link would be there. I'll just go online and show that. Just give me a second. Just give me a minute. I'll go there and screen share again. Yeah, if you see, this is our QMed's website, the organization's website. If you go to resources, we say that we have all this and it's in our online courses in the paid section, but we've just given a sample. So here, this guide to finding full text articles is here. If you click this, we have a 1-page document which tells you different ways in which you can try. No guarantees, but you can try. Okay. Then this is our courses website, qmedcourses.in. Actually, first in our main website, you have to go to this link called online courses. If you scroll down here, everything about the courses, and then accessing our courses. For institution, there's a document here. For individuals, there is here, and for undergraduate students here. So how you give a donation, how do you register, all those instructions are there. And on top of this pages, you have access QMed courses, which takes you here. When you get in here, you have to you have to click login. And create new account. This is just like in any website. Once you're logged in, then you can click and access the first 2 courses. They are free. For the other 2, you have to donate to access. You get in here. So UG students can choose this 250. They can enter 250 here, or choose this plus sign, 250 will come. The others have to choose any one of these. Minimum is 2000, which is fine. So if I remove this and if I select 1 unit of the 2000, then it comes to donate now. You put in these details, and then when you go to make payment, you have option of debit card, credit card, QR code scanning, bank transfer, everything with instructions there. So once you donate, at the end, you get an option, send a message. So just write, I would like access to QMed courses, because there are people who donate without wanting access as well. So once both those are done, then you can access all the courses. And as I said, the resources for you . So you have this guide to finding full text articles, students internet research guide, a database which is free to search, another database free to search, another database free to search. These are all the clinical trial registries. So we've given links to all these. This is another full text. All these are full text journal resources. So there are so many of these. Now, if you go to advanced search, then you can choose by category. We just saw some of the searching. You want to see only the writing and reporting, say save settings. Then you're seeing author aid, finding and using health statistics, our very old but still very valid introduction to medical writing, anyone who's doing it the first time. This is a more advanced guide. Then this is about ethics. These are about checklists for different types of papers and so on. So this Prisma S, for those who are doing systematic reviews, this is something very new. Prisma S is an advanced version of Prisma for reporting your studies. So we try and include a lot of useful resources. And then if I go to this one, which is extra reading, I'll show you the kind of topics we cover in this. So education research, for everything, we have these 3 links. Indian publications, free English language, non-free English language. So education research, publication ethics, medical education, libraries, medical writing, scientific communications, predatory journals, research in general, searching, systematic reviews, UG students research curriculum skills, and there's a couple more, I think. And we plan to add more topics. Suggestions are welcome. Yeah, generally on evidence-based medicine, that is how to find articles, something about systematic review searches, about journal clubs, how to make them better, and so on. So that is about our resource. So I think I've answered all questions. Anybody has anything more? We still have about 5-10 minutes. I can stop sharing so that. The most important thing is on our courses, the first 2 are free. At least that I would recommend everyone do it, because it covers that much needed ABC of searching and referencing. Without that, there's no point in trying to attend any other course on searching and referencing. So if, yes, UG student pays 250, they get access to all, plus if they finish all in 1 month and get good grades, they can even get prizes. Our whole intention is we want UG students to learn, because by the time they come to PG, they are definitely better equipped for their thesis in the beginning, searching for a topic, doing the protocol, etc.
There's one more. How to contact you? Wow.
Oh, sorry.
I think
Yes,
you can
I
just
have
put
to do
your
that.
email
I'll
ID.
yes, I'll just do that. 1 second.
You're going to get a bunch of emails.
Okay, this is how to contact me, and I also kept one URL that I'll share. So the best way to contact me is by email, because my office number right now, unlikely that anybody will answer. Once in a way, one of us goes. Mobile, yes, you can, but it's definitely more convenient if you WhatsApp me first and then fix a time, because I may be busy with something else. Email is ideal best way to do it. So if you have noted this down, I'd just like to go back one slide. I will copy paste this and put it on chat. This is a quiz I made. You can just copy that URL and keep it and do it at your pace, just to understand how much you've understood today. And if you wish to do it now, you can. It won't take too long. We still have 10 minutes. It's an option. Sorry. Yeah, I've kept both available so that.
If there aren't any further questions, friends, I think you all saw how passionate Dr. Vasumati is about, her work which she's doing. And honestly, let me tell you that when we've actually seen some of very good librarians, I remember Rangan Madam from KEM Hospital. When I was a lecturer in KEM, Rangan Madam used to come up to us and ask us, what is your dissertation topic? Let me help you getting the right journals or the right references. So we basically did our post-graduation at a time when there was no internet. So we had to give our references in advance to the librarian, and she would help us by getting the back volumes. Those back volumes used to be kept in, in rooms, and there would be sometimes, if the references were old, they had to be dusted. We used to sneeze first. I'm talking about 1983. I did my MD between 83 and 86. And those days, it was really difficult getting the references. And today you have everything at the click of a button. And you have learned how easy it is to do a literature search. In fact, I would say that these are what we have learned today is what are the basics of literature search. And there is, you can really advance your knowledge by joining the online courses, because there are, Mendeley is one very good resource for literature search, and I'm sure you should learn how to do that. Then, of course, there are a number of paid searches also, and that has to be supported by the libraries, which in fact in the Western countries, there's a lot of support for literature search with reference to paid search engines. So, however, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I'd just like to add something. You know, what you said about searching in the print days was very true. But today, in a way, it's actually more difficult because there's a deluge and you're expected to find everything. In those days, everybody knew the limitations that you could maximum get from KEM and your librarian could get from Sion, Nair, etc., etc. But beyond that would be unless only it's very, very important. Today, the expectation is you have to get everything, and it isn't easy in two ways. One is the access to the full text. The other is the huge, deluge of water that is on you when you're searching. And that is what our programs aim to address. The other difficulty compared to the earlier days. Plus, while it is easy to understand as I teach, there are high chances you forget a lot as you go because you're not doing it every day. And that is exactly why we created the online courses. So when one pays, one is not paying per course. One is paying as a membership to the site really. You have access for 1 year and then you renew that access because we keep adding something, we keep updating things as much as we can. Plus, there are discussion forums available where you can ask each other for doubts, ask us for doubts. We plan to have regular webinars for doubt solving for those who are registered. So there's a lot of support also involved. And we've priced it very low for institutions with the idea that institutions should take it. For a medical college, we charge 40,000. Any number in the college can be enrolled. Now that's a throwaway, but our idea is if every medical college in the country takes it, automatically so many people in the country have access at literally, peanut pricing, and we get enough to sustain. We are a not-for-profit. We need enough to pay salaries, to pay for the hosting, etc., etc. Whatever equation works best. Tomorrow, if we discover we need a little more, we might charge a little more, which is nothing. 40,000 changing to 50,000 or 60 is again nothing. If we find that we need less, we might even be willing to take less, that kind of a thing. Our mission is when there is expertise in QMET to share, it should be available across the country. We want to arrive at the right formula, for which we really need support from everybody who's listening to this. And that's why I'm saying, please subscribe to it either as an institution or as an individual. Learn, spread the word to others. That's my sincere request. Easy means it is not difficult, but easy doesn't mean you've listened to this today, you're an expert. That's something I stress very strongly.
Yes, sure. Practice makes a man perfect. So whatever you have learned today, please start practicing. You should enroll in the online courses, add to your own knowledge base. I'm telling you that when you write, bigger articles like systematic reviews and other things, as she said, there is a deluge of information and we don't know how much to take and how much to skip. So let's start small, then we can add through the online courses. And I'm sure it has been it has been very beneficial for all the students and the faculty who have attended today's session. Basumati, please accept my heartfelt thanks. And you've made a very good beginning in our academic session towards dissertation to publication. Let me tell you, number of dissertations are just lying in the cold storage because people don't know how to write.
That's right.
And I think a stint in manuscript writing also is going to be very beneficial for all the students who have written big dissertations, but to make it concise, really have a difficulty. And sometimes the faculty members are not able to spare that much time and they expect the students to come up with a perfect paper. There is nothing called as a perfect paper. It's always edited and re-edited and re-edited. But one thing for sure is do submit so that you get some critical review and then you can always work upon it and make it better. And when you find your paper published, I think the joy is tremendous and nothing can substitute that ecstasy of being, accepted by the scientific community. So with this, we come to the close of this program. And once again, thank you very much, Vasudha.
And once again, thank you from me for giving me an opportunity to reach out to so many people. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you so
All the best
much.
for the rest of the webinars.
Thank you so much. Behalf of Department of Microbiology, I'll say thanks to Dr. Vasumati Sriganesh for your precious time and Dr. Jayanti Shastri as well. And we are upcoming series for biostatic in research for next Sunday. We will let you know soon about the time and details. Thank you so much once again, all delegates and faculty.